Juliette sidled back on the massive four-poster bed, a remotely hesitant part of her still wanting to get away, but the angel smiled a rakish smile and moved over her like a massive cat, graceful and deadly, and she didn't get far. He skillfully caught her wrists in firm grips and had her pinned before she could blink. Juliette lay there, her breathing quick and sharp, and stared up at the taut muscles of his arms, chest, and torso. Her gaze boldly trailed across the tanned expanse of toned flesh, to where the rest of his body was hidden beyond the unbuttoned waistband of his blue jeans. Her mouth felt both wet and dry. Her heart hammered. Her hands flexed beneath the vice-like grips he had on her delicate wrists. The castle around them loomed in her periphery, empty yet protective. It felt both ancient and brand new. Its walls were crumbling, enshrouded by the echoes of the tapestries and torch sconces they once held. The master's chamber was warmed by the crackling of the flames in the giant stone hearth, and it was chilled by the North Sea wind that ripped through the time-worn windows and raced through the empty, ruined room. The castle was a skeleton and a ghost, broken down to its barest bones and draped in the memory of what it once was. The angel, though, he was warm. He was not a ghost. His body was hard and insistent and very, very real above her. He lowered his head to slide his gaze down the length of her slim body, and as he shifted, she once more caught sight of the massive black and silver wings at his back. Their feathers shimmered, iridescent in the shafts of moonlight that speared the empty windows and lit the stage of their clandestine play. So beautiful, she thought absently. He looked up and met her gaze, and she found herself at once lost in the strange glowing silver of his eyes. They're glowing, she thought in awe. He pinned her to the bed beneath him with that look. It claimed her, possessed her, and she was certain that no man in the world had ever looked at her, not really, until the angel had. Juliette knew she was blushing. Her cheeks were hot and her chest was flushed. Her breasts felt warm and heavy, even as her nipples hardened to painful nubs that scraped the inside of her shirt. Breathing was hard. She wanted to arch beneath him, close the gap he held above her. She wanted to touch him as she'd never wanted anything before. He stared down at her forever, watching her, taking her in. He was eating her with his eyes, and her chest felt tight. She couldn't take it. His control over her body was absolute. It was as if he willed it, and wetness gathered between her legs. As if he knew it was there, he chuckled. The sound rushed over her skin like a caress, deep and deliciously wicked. She shuddered and closed her eyes, fighting the urge to writhe beneath him. She almost broke then. She almost begged him to take her. What's wrong with me? She thought. This wasn't like her. She never gave in easily. She was stubborn to the core. What was happening? How had she let this angel get her into bed? Hadn't she just met him? I don't even know his name. Her eyes flew open when she felt the butterfly softness of his lips brushing against hers. Teasingly, he pulled back and once more locked her in his inhuman gaze. He said not a word, but smiled that faintly cruel smile of his, flashing teeth both straight and white. In the frame of his too handsome face, it was nothing short of predatory. And then he put both of her slender wrists in one of his strong hands and used the other to grab the front of her button-up shirt. The material pulled taut in his grip, scraping her tender nipples and ripping a gasp from her lips. Slowly, almost menacingly, he popped the buttons on the shirt, one after another, and then he let the material slide across her ribcage, opening her body to his stark, hungry gaze. Now she did moan. The wind rushed across her exposed skin, licking at it hungrily, tightening her nipples beneath him to a painful degree. He's going to devour me, she thought, and she didn't care.